MEM では2022年2月3日より、ウイルスという題名のアントワン・ダガタの個展を開催しています。ダガタさんはフランス・マルセイユ出身の写真家です。世界中を旅し、多くの社会的あるいは政治的主題を扱ってこられました。今回は世界的な新型コロナウイルス感染拡大に鑑み、独自の手法でパンデミックの現場を撮影記録しました。高田さんは2022年3月にフランスでロックダウンが始まったタイミングで撮影を開始。で、撮影手法は特殊なんですが、サーモグラフィーを使われました。サーモグラフィーとは物体から放射される赤外線を分析し、熱分布を図として表した写真です。つまり被写体はすべて温度によって色に分けられた画像になるわけです。パリやタベルニ、マルセイユなどいくつかの都市で撮影を3月から5月まで2ヶ月にわたって行いました。プロジェクトは路上といくつかの病院の救急治療室の内部という2つの要素から成り立っています。今回、高田さんをお迎えしてお話を伺います。Thank you, Antoine, for joining us today.
Thank you, Katsuya.
We've just started showing you a series titled The Virus at our gallery in Tokyo. Besides our photographic prints, we are screening a video work from the series on weekend. First, I heard when you received the news of COVID pandemic back in February of 2020, you were in the middle of a shooting in Mexico. And after that, you decided to come back to Paris to document the pandemic. Then lockdown started in France in mid-March, I guess. And how did you shoot in different cities for the first 2 months of the pandemic into May?
Well, before the official announcement of the lockdown, for about 8 days, I was shooting in a small city next to Paris with a traditional camera, and I was documenting the first emergency center in France, in the town of Taverny. And this was the very first emergency center, and I got authorization to get inside, and I was photographing the patients, the doctors, the testing, and still wondering what was happening. The streets were empty already, people were scared, but I was looking for the right perspective. I was shooting the police, I was shooting the doctors, I was shooting the nurses, and trying to understand the situation. A week later, Paris government announced the confinement, and the very same night, it started at midnight on the 17th of March of 2020. I had the feeling I had to choose a very specific perspective, a very personal way to confront the situation. And I chose to work with a thermic camera, thinking this would give me a way to show a different level of reality, not documenting the empty streets because there was not much to document, but trying to give an account of the fear, of the tension, of the anxiety everybody felt at that moment. And for me, the only way to show this was not by photographing the buildings and streets, but by trying to give an interpretation of reality. And for this, the thermic camera seemed to be a possible way to go for.
I understand. And I know you used thermography also before for another project. It's called Figures of Worship on Shooting Churches and Temples. Can you
Well,
talk?
actually,
Yeah.
I used the thermic camera on 2 occasions. The first one was in Paris after the Bataclan terrorist attack, where so many people died, and we were together that night.
Yeah. Quite remember. Yes.
And I was shooting in front of the Bataclan, and from that date and this very special moment, I chose to document religion in Paris, and I shot in churches, in temples, in synagogues, in Muslim mosques, all different religions, but trying to go beyond the specific details of each religion. I was more interested in what was in the center of this spiritual need to believe in God, and, for people who do. And so I shot with a thermic camera for a few months. The second occasion was in Japan, where I was working in Hiroshima.
Yeah.
And trying to documenting the present, trying to find an echo to the past. And again, the thermic camera gave me this possible way to go beyond the simple surface of reality and trying to get more texture, memory, the past. Also the fear, like these events were beyond what we can conceive, or beyond what we can imagine, or beyond what we can accept as a normality. Or so yes, these few occasions were like the most meaningful moments for using this term language.
I see. I quite remember the night on that was November 13th, 2015.
Exactly.
That was during Party Photo that we participated in, and at night of Friday night, we were at the gallery at the opening reception at the gallery in the Mare area, and then I suddenly had a message from a friend of mine in Paris that there was a terrorist attack. Terrorists had attacked the Bataclan theater. That was actually near the gallery where we were, actually. Then we had to stay inside the gallery until 2 or 3 a.m. And when we finally got out of the gallery and walked to our hotel, we were together. And on the street, there were policemen with shotguns here and there. So it was quite a scary night in my life, actually. And I didn't know at the time one of your daughters were also around in the neighborhood at that night, and you tried to make a call. So it was quite a night. So
actually, I think in this kind of crisis moments, usually I have the same type of reaction, meaning like when things are happening and you have some kind of possible access to it, my choice is always to get inside, to go as close as possible to the event. And of course, I mean, I need to understand and I need to think and I need to make sense out of what's happening. But also I need this kind of physical contact, engagement in the situation. And it's exactly what happened with the COVID crisis, like for the first 3 months, every single day from morning to night or from night to morning, I was in the streets, in the hospital, because I felt this was the only way to really be part of the world I live in. And of course, I kept reading every day on internet, the press, and trying to make sense out of it. But I think whenever we can, it's important to have this kind of total, complete engagement in what's happening around us.
That's right, yeah. And this image by thermographic lens has a special effect to, equalizing people under the certain situation. The people on the street and the people lying in bed in the emergency room, as well as the people from this another series figures of worship, gathering and praying at the same time. Whatever the places are, people takes the certain same rituals and behaviors.
Yes, for me, it was very important to never to forget that it's not only a medical crisis. It's not only a matter of sanitary crisis. It's also economic and social crisis. And so in the streets, the only people left were the homeless people, and this is why I spent so much time photographing them, but also the migrants in centers. I mean, basically, I did whatever I could, never to forget this economical dimension. It was important for me, like to not to make it too simple an issue. I think things are more complex. I always felt that the fear we all felt at that moment, of course, is very important, and I was trying to give an account of this fear, but also how this fear was used, to deal with economics, to deal with the control, to deal with security. I mean, all these issues are linked together, and I tried to understand as much as I could.
I see. And for this project, your stance is a bit different from the other series. That's, for instance, I would like to quote a part of your artistic statement. Quote, I never photograph, you say in the artistic statement that I never photograph if I'm not a full participant in the situation I am interfering in or provoking. I slowly abandoned the position behind the camera to integrate myself in the images as a mere character of the situations I depict. The process was brutal, distancing myself from a straightforward documentary photography. I document what I live, and I live the situations I document. So in this project, Virus, you have a certain distance with the subjects. But at the same time, I think you have a certain way to interfere the situation, because you cross the line into the emergency room at hospitals, and you slept at hospitals for many nights during shooting. So
yeah, I was lucky to be accepted in different hospitals as overnight, for a week at a time in the same hospital, sleeping inside on the COVID ward. And as always, for me, it was a huge responsibility to do this work, because I felt it was important to document this very specific moment in history, but also it was a privilege. I always felt privileged to be able to walk the streets when nobody was walking the streets. And I was like, sometimes it was beautiful. I mean, Paris in spring, empty for weeks and weeks. It was really magic feeling sometimes. And in the same time, it was very painful and very scary. This tension. I couldn't get close to people because people would get scared. Everybody was nervous. So it was like very, after a few days, it became very heavy. And in the same way, the hospital, it was such a relief to go to the hospital, because of course it was painful and tragic, and so many people died, and I mean, it was so much tension and horror in the hospital. But in the same time, it was the only place where people kept touching each other, hugging, speaking, communicating, getting close, touching. I mean, just touching hands at the time was a huge thing. And so really the hospital was not only difficult and horrible, but it was a beautiful place to be in. And I think the pictures speak a lot about this empathy. I mean, you can see the way the bodies live with each other, the way they hold each other. It was a lot about this, like what was left of humanity in this very terrifying context.
Yeah, I see. Well, it's really a historical moment in human history that the pandemic made us think of many things, and not only our human ties and relationship with the family and the friends, but also the control by the government, how we behave under this emergency. A lot of issues we have to think about. And this virus series, this project has been presented first in Paris and other countries, including Mexico, Spain, Ukraine, and China for the past 2 years. So I'm quite impressed by the speed of the project.
Yeah,
it
for me,
spreads quickly. Yeah.
For me, it's interesting, and it was very fascinating to see how people from different countries different cultures, geographically distant places, all came to me to share some of this work, like to.
Right.
It was very interesting, because of course we each lived the situation in a different way. I mean, each country has its specific and in terms of reaction, in terms of rules, but because maybe the pictures are so essential, so simple, but so full of humanity, maybe. And so from China to Mexico, people felt the same. And I mean, we had 2 huge exhibitions in China. We had 1 huge exhibition in Mexico, but in so many countries, I think about maybe 15 to 20 countries. And, always with very small means, very small economical means, because it was complicated everywhere to exhibit and to do anything. But it was a lot of energy. But for Tanya Borges and myself, we did work for months and months, like trying to share in every possible way, installations, slideshows, projections, film, exhibitions, and trying to contaminate, to propose this different vision of what's happening. And after everybody was so impacted by the situation, people were very hungry for a different type of interpretation. No, what do you make out of this situation? How do you, what's happening now? And so I think the speakers propose a different way to make sense out of the situation.
I think that's amazing. The project spreads almost as fast as the virus spreads also.
Right.
So it's really amazing how fast you work. Not only exhibitions, but also, a lot of symposiums and artist talks, and the publishing project is also important. I would like to introduce this important book you published in 2020.
I started to edit the work right after I finished shooting, like a few days after, and the book came out in September 2020.
Really? That's amazing. Impossible.
It's a huge book. It's a lot of work.
And it's really, it includes more than 3,000 images and a lot of texts by philosophers and journalists. And I would like to ask you a couple of questions about this book. First, you commissioned a group of writers and philosophers to contribute to the book. So I think this book itself is a piece of artwork that complements the exhibition showing prints. And also it is an important vehicle to transmit your ideas and images together. In the book, Mr. Mehdi Belhaj Kashim wrote about the format construction of the book in his introductory text. There are about 7 chapters, and each assigned to one writer. So you probably sent them the images of the chapter in advance. How did you made and edit this book? What did you propose to these philosophers and journalists?
Well, of course, I made some kind of choice. I mean, deciding which writers I was going to work with. But basically, it's people I trust, and each one of them works in a different field. I mean, a few of them are philosophers, but some are more like into some kind of poetic approach, and some are more political, and some are more philosophical. And so I wanted to have this diversity of point of views.
I see.
And but basically, people had to write in a very short time. They had a few days to write a text, and it was more like I wanted each one to write in total freedom and without limits about a very intimate interpretation of the situation. And I almost saw this as a political tract, short text with no control, just to share some kind of perspective. And I think that's the way it works in the end. It was like one of the texts is different. One of Mathilde Girard, it's a much longer text. It's like 40 pages long.
Yeah.
And Mathilde, I was in touch with her during the pandemic, the lockdown, the first lockdown, and she kept some kind of diary.
Yes, there was a diary, yeah.
And so this text is different. This text is more like a parallel. I was photographing the outside and the hospital, and Mathilde was writing about the inside, people confined.
Yeah. And each chapter has the title and the theme, like the invention of an epidemic, contagions, the outside, the language of bodies, silence, resistances, bare life. So for each writer, you presented this theme.
No,
no.
basically, I gave a total freedom to the writers. I mean, they took total freedom to write.
But they saw the images in advance.
Yes.
Yeah.
But they wrote whatever they wanted, and after I did find the most natural way and the most challenging way to mix the text and the images. They had no limits and no direction. They could write whatever they wanted.
I see. Yeah, that's why the book is expanded beyond the mere photo book, Well, normally the photographer asks for the critics or for the historians to write the text, but what's interesting, exciting about this book is it has a diversity of writers and thinking and ideas. That's fantastic, I think.
No, and also the most important point maybe was I knew that by making a book so fast, it would be imperfect, it would be fragile, it would be in a way completely instinctive. And but it was very important at that moment to make a book. I mean, we made the book when people were still confined, like people were still locked down in the apartment. The book was out already, and of course there was no place to sell it. There was no place to show it. So the most important part was to keep doing, to do something about the situation. And I know that in July 2020, we did a huge video installations in the streets of Arles festival, and there was no festival. I was the only one in the streets of Arles with a huge video installation and very few people in the streets to look at it. Again, it was not about showing, it was about being present and doing against the pandemic, like resisting in a way to the pandemic.
I see. The festival itself was cancelled at the time, but your installation was shown to the public, right?
Yes, for 3 nights in the streets of Arles.
Okay.
We did have maybe 200 or 300 spectators, but it was very, very few compared with the thousands of usually.
Yeah, of course. But the thing is, I think the important thing is not the number of participants or visitors, but how they came to see the show and sharing the experience together at this moment of a critical situation. So and the people would spread this about your works through the internet nowadays.
Yes, internet, of course, was the main way that the work could be seen everywhere. It was hugely useful to be able to spread this work. But of course, as a citizen, I mean, I think people had to stay home and had to protect themselves and protect each other by being locked down. But I felt as a photographer, things are not so simple. And I think photographers, at least I myself as a photographer, felt I had the responsibility to react and to propose and I couldn't be just passive, I think my job as an artist was to make something out of this.
And for this project, you also used the SNS quite actively. You upload images each day, every day, and sharing the whole project with people around the globe. So how do you work with this new media as compared with the physical exhibition or installation?
But basically, I don't. I mean, for 3 months, I was living in Paris in the Magnum office,
Yeah.
Which was empty, and basically, and so I was totally isolated and from the world. And my only contact with my partner, who lives in Mexico, Tanya. And so basically, she's the one who opened Instagram and kept in touch with the world. And every day, I kept sending images, just images to Tanya. And she was the only one I would speak to by phone or by.
Okay, yeah. You talk about the how you work with the SNS Instagram through Tanya, who is working on it, and so what happened after uploading every day the images when Tanya started uploading these images? What happened? You got the reactions from all over the world?
For me, it was kind of strange because usually there is a long period of time between the moment I do my work and the moment I exhibit or I publish a book. But here it was a daily. Tanya would tell me what type of reaction we had, what people would say, and it was very, very important in a way. It gave me the strength and the patience to go back every day. So many times I was tempted just to give up, especially because the access to hospital was so complicated. In the end, I was able to work in 10 different hospitals, but it was very complex, and to have this immediate reaction, and everybody was like so implicated because everybody was involved in a political, emotional way in this common situation. And this was a huge impact on the way we work, and we had the same reaction with the exhibition in Paris, we had the same reaction with the book. I think people were isolated for so long and traumatized in a way. And so there was a huge need to exchange, to communicate around this very specific condition.
So mostly there are positive reactions from,
yes.
yeah.
And the same for all the photographic part, all the exhibitions, installations that happened. It basically all came through internet. People proposing to show the work in so many countries, but there was no economic possibility. The places were locked down, but still we struggled in so many different ways to have the work exist and to keep this communication going.
So it happened at the same time, shooting and uploading images and getting responses from people around the world.
Basically, I shot for the 3 first months. I shot from March until June 2020.
Yeah. So Tanya started uploading images quite on the first stage.
Yeah, I think I don't remember exactly, but probably like 10 days after the beginning of the crisis.
Oh, it's early, yeah. So it's quite dynamic a movement happening during the course of a shooting, and also it's quite unusual for you, I think. Shooting and showing works almost at the same time and getting reactions, and at the same time you started working on the planning exhibitions and publishing at the same time.
But again, it was not a photographic logic, it was a political logic. I mean, the most important was not to make the best book or the best exhibition. The most important was to be involved with the world and the situation of the world, and to share this perspective with as many people as possible through the book, exhibition, for whatever means. But it was really more of a political and a social position. We knew that doing things so fast would be harmful to the work, but the priority was just to keep being active.
I see. So for you, photographs and books, the medias to connect people, it's more like a tools to to make yourself involved in the world, and there are series of events, social events, political events.
I would say that part of it is very personal. I would say it's like existential necessity of leading my life in the best meaningful, the more meaningful, the more pertinent way. The other thing is more political. Is more like this position of mine. I have to share it with others. I have to tell the story to contaminate again, or to influence the perception of people have, or the ideas. So it's existential, it's political, and it's aesthetical too. It's like finding new forms of language, finding new ways of using photography, pushing photography from an aesthetic language to a more physical, political language. And all these things are complex and quite different, but in the end, they mix together and they make what my photography is about.
So for you, for instance, a photographic print is not the work. The work itself is this whole movement of your activities, including prints, books, and even the internet, SNS, everything.
Yeah, you could even say that for me, photography itself, all these aspects of photography, like printing, exhibiting, publishing, are compromise. You know, for me, all this is a necessary compromise, but the real beautiful, innocent, meaningful part is the moment of the interaction with the world. You know,
I see.
And this physical, instinctive, engaged relationship with the reality around me.
I heard you were influenced by the French movement, social movement, the International Situationist movement, when you were young. So at the same time, there was a students' protest movement in France all over. So that was your the experience, the influence to your artistic activities.
Yeah, I mean, of course, it makes things complicated when you are 20 years old and you decide, or you think, or you agree that art is not possible and that the only possible art is life. So I did spend 15 years just living and giving no place to art or any kind of communication, just like pushing my experience of the world as far as possible. So it really took me 15 years to come back to this necessity of generating a language, of sharing with people, of giving this position, making this position understandable and to others. And that's why I came to photography so late. You know, I came to photography when I was 37 years old, because I had the necessity of giving a concrete shape to this extreme position of living every day of my life like a unique adventure. And today I try to preserve this intensity, but in the same time I learned the patience to find the way to share the story with others. You know?
I see. But it was a big encounter, quite a important encounter for you to, I mean, with the photography encounter. I mean, the encounter with the photography was the quite important and a big incident in your life. And you started as a photographer in the later 30s, you said. So photography, you say, what is photography for you? Like it's a mirror of your artistic endeavor?
Well, for a few years, I thought photography was mostly a handicap. You know, I was used to live my life without limits and just like going like everywhere. I thought it was politically meaningful to be, and living in the most extreme and meaningful way. But photography was kind of making things not so pure anymore. No, it was like always a compromise and having this kind of ambiguous ambition of making a good photo out of it. So it was some kind of dirty compromise. After a few years, I realized that photography was the opposite. It was a way to even push further the experience. It was a way to canalize the energy and to be more disciplined, to be more like conscious myself of what I was looking for. And so it really helped me to develop in many ways my own experience, you know, and to push it exactly. It became more of a discipline, almost like not military, but you know, like like a warrior, some kind of warrior discipline of, and even to go to the most crazy situations. It involves a lot of thinking, a lot of reflection, a lot of discipline, a lot of patience, a lot of resistance. So yeah, in the end, it was really some kind of, I mean, I used once the expression of martial art, you know, it became, and it's not about art or photography, it's about living. How do we make the exercise of living worth it, you know?
Okay, so you said photography is like a martial arts for you. So how to make a living, how to live, in what way?
How to live, how to live to the full extent. How to live up to your words, you know. I mean, I write sometimes and I try to express what I have in my mind, in my art. But after the job is to live up to this level, you know. It's not just to express ideas, it's to express ideas and to make sure you live to the extent of those words, you know. And this is a real responsibility. And again, it is a privilege because you end up reinventing your destiny every day, every morning, deciding what your life is going to be like and what it should be like. And this is like, it's hugely difficult, it's complex, but it's privilege because you play with your own existence like a raw material. You know, you just, it's like sculpting your own existence. It is a beautiful process.
Interesting. So photography is like a, as you said, existential experience almost.
Exactly. For me, it's not the art of looking or seeing; it's the art of doing, of making, of being.
Right. So you live photography. Yeah, you don't make photography, but you live photography itself.
Or maybe photography makes me.
Yeah. Wow, quite beautiful. Yeah. I see. Okay. Thank you, Antoine. We are still under the influence of the pandemic that continued already 3 years now, with probably a little hope that it will end. But I think your work and the book gives us a chance to contemplate the human nature and the behavior in relation with society at this historical moment in the time, involving many issues like the control by the government and human rights, the physical and emotional relation, and distance with people, family ties and friendship, etc., etc. So I really appreciate you give us the chance to exhibit your works in Tokyo. Thank you very much.
I thank you personally a lot for all the work you put into this exhibition, which was, again, it's the most important is that to know that the work exists somewhere and people can look at it, and most can make something out of it. You know, it's not something about the work itself; it's also about how do we share this common experience that we.
I hope so too. Yeah, the exhibition has just started, so we started sharing your works and experience with the Japanese audience. So let's see what happens. Okay, thank you so much.
I'm leaving tomorrow to Brazil to work in the hospitals again.
Okay.
So let's see what the future. I hope it all goes in the right direction.
Wonderful.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
どうもありがとうございます。
ありがとうございます。